How's it going, everybody? Today is July 20th, 2022. I am recording this with about 2 weeks left to the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And for the last several months, there have been rumors that Juan Soto could be available at the trade deadline. These rumors first kind of sparked up at the beginning of the season when he rejected a big contract. Then the Nats came out and said, no way, we're not trading him, we're going to build around him. But since then, he's rejected a 14-year, $440 million contract. It's become clear that the Nationals are going to be selling their franchise to a new owner. And so it makes sense to either lock him up long-term and build around him, or to move him and get some other pieces that new ownership can build around. So today's conversation is going to be, what exactly will it take to acquire Juan Soto? Because you're probably going to have to give up an enormous amount in prospect capital, and not to mention re-signing him, which you won't have to do for another 2.5 seasons, but still going to be very expensive. I am talking with Jason Surge of 161 River Avenue. He's got one of the more popular Yankees channels, and I'm proud to call him a friend. Let's get to it. So let's start out with the rumors of what the Nationals are asking for in return for Juan Soto. Word around the campfire is that they want some combination of a team's top 4 prospects, some MLB-ready players, guys who could step in either right away or next season at the latest, and possibly the ability to take on the contracts of either Patrick Corbin or Steven Strasburg. Now, Corbin has 2 years, $59 million left on his deal. Strasburg has 4 years, $140 million left on his. Neither one of them is really getting anybody out anymore. Now, generally, when a player's traded, if another team takes on an entire contract, it lessens the prospect haul, but that doesn't seem to be the case here because they want to raid the farm system as well. So I'm just going to throw you this question. Is it even worth it? And do you see any possibility at all of this happening?
I can see it happening, but I think this is where Cashman has to kind of do his thing, right? You know, the prospect, so let's just say it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That to me is in line with Matt Olson, because he got 1, 2, and 3 from the Braves, Oakland. And you're talking Matt Olson versus Juan Soto. So adding a 4th is not unreasonable in my opinion. The additional pieces after that is where I think it can get a little cloudy, right? You know, whether it's be major league players like let's just say Gleyber Torres or whatnot. And let's go with the logic they want you to absorb Patrick Corbin first. So I'm okay giving up a combination of 4 products because it's Juan Soto. But if you're adding Corbin, we're absorbing $59 million. I'm going to want them to absorb some money. I'm going to want them to absorb either Hicks, Chapman, Gallo, or some combination of them to offset a little bit. And even if they absorb all 3, we're still saving them money just on Corbin alone. And they're getting 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that to me is a pretty good trade. And it's something I would consider now. If they want to layer it with another major league player or whatnot, let's just say they want Gleyber Torres, right? Who's more of a win now type move. So that they don't necessarily have to do a full tear down or full rebuild. Then I'm going to probably want to mix and match things. I'm going to say, if you want a Gleyber Torres, and I'm probably going to want back Oswald Peraza, something like that. So it's got to be fair. And the Yankees are going to overpay. Any team that's acquiring Juan Soto because of the fact they're getting Juan Soto is going to overpay. To the degree they overpay is, I think, is going to be the question. And Cashman, as you know, doesn't like overpaying.
Yeah.
For anything. So at what point is it going to get a little nuts? And I think anything added onto the prospects and Corbin, I think, is going to be where it gets a little. This is where it's kind of like Draft Day, the movie, where they kind of back and forth. Right?
Yeah, it's going to be complex. I've had a number of people text me and be like, "Hey, is this Soto thing real? Is there any chance this could happen?" And my standard response is, it's a non-zero chance, but it's pretty small. I mean, look, Cashman doesn't like trading prospects anyway. I mean, we could have had Manny Machado if he was willing to give up Justice Sheffield, ends up hanging on to Justice Sheffield. Could have had Verlander, but I think they didn't want to get rid of Clint Frazier. I mean, these are difference makers in potential World Series seasons. Yeah. The only difference that I can see between this year and prior years is that you have the evidence from the last few years of, hanging on to these guys didn't get you anything. You didn't win a World Series. Fan base is getting pretty frustrated. Cashman read a lot in the papers and saw a lot on ESPN and heard a lot on the radio this past winter about, how much longer is he going to be the GM if you don't win, right? Now, if I'm hearing that and I have a chance to trade some guys that, let's be honest, most fans don't watch the farm system. Most fans won't miss Peraza or Volpe or Dominguez if we deal them. And Luis Gil's the number 4 guy, and he's on the IL anyway with Tommy John. So if we moved all 4 of those guys, I don't think the fan base would be that upset. Now, I'd be a little heartbroken because I've got my heart set on watching Jason Dominguez, on watching Anthony Volpe, and I would be really sad, but I'd probably get over it like after a couple of big clutch Juan Soto moments. I keep like going back on the contracts thing being bigger than most people think, because that's a lot of money for a new owner to inherit. They're gonna be selling the team, and that new owner is going to be able to have a fresh start if you don't have the contracts of Corbin or a Strasburg. That's why I think it comes down to either the Mets, the Yankees, or the Dodgers, the teams that have the biggest wallets that can absorb those contracts. And I also think that might maybe lessen the amount of the prospect haul that you're going to have to, give back if you're able to take those contracts. There was no other contract coming in the Matt Olson deal. It was just Olson for prospects. Thoughts on that?
Well, and you make a good point, because you mentioned those 3 teams. Those are pretty much, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 more teams, the only teams who can actually absorb the money and give them an extension and have the prospects to fork over in return. So it's going to be a handful, and they're going to try and take advantage of teams who could absorb that. So it's like, you want my Harry Winston diamond? Well, you need you to take this gold-plated bracelet too, right? They call Patrick Corbin's contract. So, and that's the way I'm looking at it. So they want you to take something that's not as appealing for something that's the big prize. And Cashman does that too, right? So like, if you want Chase Headley, you got to take Brian Mitchell with it, kind of thing,
right?
Whatnot. And that's just the way that it goes. But like, this is the first time in a long time where there was a player of this talent level, this maturity and age that's become available. I can't even think of anybody at this level who's become available. No. And he is the needle mover that everybody wants, right? And he's going to be, if you get a Juan Soto, and like you said too, with Cashman being on the hot seat, there's a lot of folks that are saying, well, you didn't get Freeman, you didn't get Correa, so you have a chance to get Soto. You better get Soto. Now, to that point too, Soto alone does not solve the pitching problem.
Right.
So if they're going to go in, they have to go with the gusto. They're going to go for Soto. They got to get a pitcher too. And that's just the way I'm looking at it as well. So there's that other layer incorporated in here that, where Cashman needs to be really, if he's going to go in, he's got to go all the way in. So, can't just go Soto and not get pitching.
Yeah. One thing I found interesting was the comments by Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole at the All-Star game. Now, typically you wouldn't hear players on a first place team advocating for a trade, but I thought more importantly, they were saying, and it sounded almost like it was an audience to 1 or 2, right? Cal and or Hal and Brian, that they don't want the Red Sox and they don't want the Astros to get Juan Soto. And you definitely don't want to have to go to the World Series and face the Mets or the Dodgers with Juan Soto. There's a lot of pressure on Brian Cashman here coming from his own team. It might be demoralizing. I think it would be really demoralizing if the Astros got him. If the Mets got him, it's like, well, we understand because they have the financial, flexibility of Cohen. And if the Dodgers get him, it would be like, well, they've made a huge move every year. What do you make of the Judge and Cole comments?
I think it might be a cry for, like you said, a cry for Hal and Cashman to actually, we want to win a World Series. Okay. We know it's an acknowledgement. Like, we know that we need a guy like this, right? Or we need a guy like Castillo, and please don't let these guys go to Houston. All right. They're the team we're trying to beat. And in my opinion, the World Series is either going through the Bronx or to Houston. So, and if they're going to fortify that team, we have to fortify this team. We know Houston's going to make moves, right? They always do. That's a fact. We know Boston will probably make moves too. So the Yankees have to make moves, and they have to make the right ones. And they're in a position now to use, like, the infield. We're 6 deep, 7 deep at the shortstop position in the prospects. So we have the ability to use deal from a position of depth to address a huge hole. So why not do that? And again, I know it's, there's worries about kind of gutting the farm and getting rid of stuff. Well, they just had the draft too. They just restocked the farm with a lot of college level players too. So that will soften the blow a little bit. But at the end of the day, you have a chance to this is like a modern day Mickey Mantle or something like that. Or you have a chance to get this guy and you're the Yankees, you got to do it.
Well, the thing about Mickey is he was good on defense. Juan Soto is actually not a good defender. So that's one reason that I kind of,
worry.
I'm not 100% all in. I mean, I would love to have Juan Soto, but I was reading this book by, I think his name is Christopher Voss, and it's called Never Split the Difference. He was a hostage negotiator, and he's got a master class out that teaches you how to negotiate.
Nice.
And it's interesting. And I was thinking, man, Brian Cashman should watch this, because the best way to get to the best possible yes is you have to get to a no first, right? You have to get to the other side's walking away point. For me, I'm okay with giving up one of the shortstops, but you got to keep one because we don't have another shortstop that's right there. I'd be fine. I'd prefer to deal Peraza. It would sting to deal Volpe because, he's a New York kid. He's a New York fan. Just the numbers he put up, the stolen base numbers he's putting up this year, I think he'll add a lot of excitement. That's something that's a dimension that Juan Soto doesn't add, right? He doesn't steal your bags. And that's one of the ways in which Major League Baseball shifting with the pitch clock and things like that. So to me, you got to keep one of the shortstops. My preference is Volpe. I get it. They're probably not going to allow that to happen. I was looking at the Nationals prospects, and none of their top guys are center fielders or outfielders really that are ready. So they're going to want an outfielder. They're going to want Dominguez, right? So Peraza and Dominguez, I would probably do. But Volpe and Dominguez, I think that's my pushback point where it's like, all right, let's find another way to get it done. What about you?
Well, I think that's where, if you can add a major league player like a Gleyber Torres instead of one of those guys, because again, Gleyber represents a more transitional player. He's more win now guy. We have a guy we could plug in right now.
But are they going to really win now? Do they really? I mean, they're not going to beat the Braves or the Mets in the next couple of years. So it makes no sense for them. If I'm Brian Cashman, I'm trying to talk him out of that. I'm trying to say, look, I get you want to put some butts in the seats. You want to have a name to say you got something for Juan Soto. Here's what you should do. You should sell this as in 3 years, we're going to have a juggernaut because we're going to have so many great prospects coming up. And maybe we can give you a couple of guys that you can, flip. We talked about like a Domingo Germán, somebody who's a starting pitcher now that could step right in, but you could probably deal him for prospects next year if he finishes this year well,
And that's to your point too. That's what I see Gleyber Torres as to kind of a transitional. They could flip him, or it can at least soften the blow so that they're not doing a full tear down, because they're not going to be like, we're going to build around Carter Keyboom. Okay. People not going to want to hear that. So they're going to want to get a combination of young, controllable players like Torres, who's got a couple of years left, and Germán or Dominguez and whatnot. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it too. And again, that to me is, I think, the more representative of a Nationals kind of transitional reshuffling and rebuild at the same time, if that makes sense. And then my cutoff points, like you mentioned too, once you start demanding Ken Waldichuk, I'm out. You start demanding Waldichuk. You want me to take Strasburg instead of Corbin? I'm out. Okay, I'll take Strasburg, but you're giving me back Volpe and Dominguez.
Right.
That's what it's got to be.
That's why there's just no way. Like, a lot of people want this trade to happen. Like, go get him now. Go get him. Don't cut everybody out. No way this is happening before the deadline. And they really don't even need to trade him before the deadline. They could hang on to him till the winter if they're not satisfied with the package. That's why I think that there's a very low chance that this would actually happen. I think Cashman knows he's got a good team. They're looking at the data and they know that there's some areas they need to address. They got to get another pitcher. They've got to add a little bit of a contact bat at least. Benintendi's off the table now because of the whole can't play in Toronto thing. I think this might allow them to sneak in and snatch up, a Hap or, somebody like that you're not expecting because other teams are going to be focused on trying to get the Soto thing done, especially teams that want an outfielder. Real quick, I want to bring up, just the trades that the Yankees have made at the deadline that I can remember.
Mhm.
We've heard rumors, and you remember these rumors, everything back from Randy Johnson in '98 to Manny Machado, I think it was 2018,
Mm.
and everything in between. Every year there's somebody big, and the Yankees almost never get the big gun, right? So I wanted to kind of just go through. There's the Kent Phelps deal for Jay Buhner in '88.
Yeah.
David
Hey.
David Cohn and Ruben Sierra in '95. Now Cohn was probably one of the bigger hired guns, but he wasn't like Superman. He was good. He ended up losing twice in the playoffs. Had a good Yankees career. Ruben Sierra was kind of like he was a bat, but he wasn't. He wasn't a Soto level bat.
No.
2000, Dave Justice was kind of an under the radar move. He did have 20 home runs and did a great job. It was one of his better moves. But Jeff Weaver was another guy the Yankees ended up going after. They made some moves. Brutal. Bobby Abreu, again, not a big name at that point, but a recognizable name.
Mhm.
Ichiro Alfonso Soriano. 2016, they unload players. They get back Gleyber Torres, Clint Frazier. 2017, that was the one year that I can remember them going for it at the deadline, like really going for it. And you see that instead of going out and getting huge names, they went out and got a combination of guys who they thought could help. Todd Frazier for third base, Tommy Kahnle, the bullpen piece. I remember watching him in Chicago earlier that season. I remember that was the series that Judge really started to cement himself and take off. But the one guy who dominated the Yankees was Tommy Kahnle with that changeup. And I was thinking, man, it would love to have him. And the Yankees went out and got him. And he was young at that point, controllable. David Robertson they brought back. And then they also went out and got Sonny Gray, who, we all know how that worked out. 2018, it was Zach Britton. Again, it was a piece that fit a specific need. You needed some late inning ground ball help. 2018, Luke Voigt. And then 2021, you just need a couple of left-handed bats. You get Rizzo and you get Gallo. Now, Gallo is probably one of the bigger names moved, but he's done nothing. So Cashman doesn't have the track record of going out and getting that Randy Johnson, Manny Machado, Bryce Harper type of guy, Manny Ramirez. Like we've seen a lot of these guys become available. I just don't think he's got that club in his bag. I think he hugs the prospects too hard. But just final thoughts on what you think will be his, I guess, what would Brian Cashman be willing to do for Juan Soto? How far do you think he'll be willing to go?
I think he'd probably go Dominguez, Peraza. I'm not sure if he's going to go Volpe, to be honest with you.
I agree with you.
I think he'll go probably Luis Medina or Hayden Wesneski or both, but I think he wants to hold on. I think his two no-goes are Volpe and Waldichuk. And those would essentially be mine too. Now, I'd be willing to part with Volpe if I can keep Peraza. But because it's for a player like Juan Soto, it's really hard to get this generational player without those guys.
Yeah.
And they will use the excuse, well, we got 1, 2, and 3 from the Braves, right?
Right.
Okay, from you guys. And again, the Yankees farm, a top 10 farm 1 through 4 is different than a bottom 5 farm 1 through 4. So I get the quality of the prospects has to be figured in too. So, and all that stuff. But Cashman, like you said too, he doesn't like overpaying. He trades, doesn't like overpaying. The only time they overpay is in free agency, right? With like guys like Sabathia and Garrett Cole and whatnot. So, and understandably so, that was the ace that they needed. I get it. But he does prospect hug an awful lot. But I think this is an opportunity. And again, what if, like you said, what if they get a Castillo and settle for Brian Reynolds? I would be very happy with that.
That's a great point, that the availability of Juan Soto has made me not even think of the name Brian Reynolds in the last couple of weeks. You might be able to get in under the radar and get that. I mean, imagine that. If you able to get sort of a below market value deal for Reynolds and maybe not have to give up a Dominguez, because you can say, on the conversation with Pittsburgh, hey, look, reason I don't have Juan Soto right now is because I won't give up Jason Dominguez. I'm not giving him up for Brian Reynolds. Give me another price. And I mean, you might be able to get it done. I tell you what, it's an exciting. This is my favorite time of year, other than maybe the hot stove in the wintertime, because there's like free agents and you get the whole press conference and all that stuff. I love that. But this is the most exciting time of the year, especially if you're a contender. If you were Brian Cashman, what would your focus be? Would you try and go out and get Juan Soto, or would you just try and do one of these moves like in 2017 where you get a number of pieces that are maybe that just kind of improve you in a overall way in a wide variety of ways?
I would try to do two moves. But number one, I would try to get Luis Castillo to get that co-ace with Garrett Cole. And then secondly, either an Ian Happ D-Rob combo or a Brian Reynolds David Bednar combo, because both those moves combined is still going to cost less than for one Juan Soto.
Yeah.
Okay? You're going to be forking up less, and you're going to be addressing multiple positions at the same time. That, to me, they have several holes, right, in these areas. And again, Juan Soto alone doesn't address that. As much as it would be fantastic to get him, and again, he's setting it's a long-term building block, but so is Brian Reynolds. So is some of the other guys. So is Luis Castillo if you give him that. So I'd rather have 2 or 3 building blocks than one huge building block. So, and that's the way I look at it. So if I'm Cashman, that's kind of my path, but I would love distracting everybody, thinking that we're going hard for Soto, and while I'm sneaking in behind the weeds and getting these guys when they're not paying attention. That's exactly what I want to do.
If I wake up on August 3rd and the Yankees have Castillo and Brian Reynolds and they still kept somehow Volpe and Dominguez, I'm a happy man. I would also go after, I would go after Daniel Bard from Colorado. I mean, he's a hard thrower. He's having success this year. Seems to have finally, put it together. He's pitched in the AL East before, so he's familiar with the pressure cooker, and I think you could use one more hard thrower out of that bullpen. You've got some guys this year. I thought, like, in previous years, it was almost too many hard throwers and not enough kind of funky guys, but I just don't think Loaiza's the same guy this year, and I don't trust him in a big spot, so I'm kind of looking for that guy that can take some pressure off of him as one of your late inning situational guys. You've lost Chad Green, so I just don't think there's enough good quality fastballs at the back end of the rotation right now. What about Aroldis Chapman? Do you think the Yankees would possibly send him out at the trade deadline?
As part of a Nationals, like I said, if you want me to absorb Patrick Corbin, you got to take Chapman back. You got to take Gallo back, at least. And again, you combine them, they're expiring at the end of the year. It doesn't even cost half of what Corbin's going to cost.
Right.
So that's my trade-off, right? If you want me to take this guy, you got to take a few of these guys. And again, if we give you Hicks, I'm giving you somebody on the cheap to replace a Juan Soto if they go down that path. Okay.
Right.
Now, I think I think Chapman's flippable, maybe to the Padres or somebody else who they just like, or even the Dodgers, like adding depth pieces. So now I don't expect anything in return except for payroll relief.
Right.
The 83rd prospect, I don't care. I'd rather free up a roster spot for Clark Schmidt or somebody like that, and put somebody here. And to me, because that's unproductive roster, it's unproductive capital, and we're paying their salary anyway. So regardless, I want somebody who's going to give us a return on investment, whether it's Clark Schmidt. We're paying it regardless until the end of the year. So give me somebody that's better in that position, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Somebody reliable, somebody dependable. We need that.
Final thought, Juan Soto, does he get moved and where to?
Dodgers.
Hey, wholeheartedly agree. That's who I have. I think the Dodgers, they've shown they're willing to make the move. Last year getting Turner and Scherzer, and they've got the capital to make any kind of contract they want happen. Big fan base,
7 top 100 prospects and a GM who's willing to part with them. That's an equalizer right there. We have 5 and a GM who's not willing to part with them. That's the difference. Okay. So, and I understand Cashman's position. I get it. But at the end of the day, I think Juan Soto becomes a Dodger.
Jason, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, brother.